Hello everyone. We'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, What's New in Microsoft Dynamics GP 2016. We appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to join us today. There are a couple of housekeeping items we'd like to mention before we begin. All attendees are in listen-only mode. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please either raise your hand and we'll unmute your line, or submit them through the GoToWebinar question box. We'll be answering questions throughout today's presentation and also be saving time at the end in case you think of anything additional. I'd like to introduce today's speaker. We have Jeff Smith, who is a solutions architect here at Socius. For the past 20 years, Jeff has been creating long-term relationships as a consultant for Socius. Jeff's primary responsibilities include enhancing client relationships and developing business opportunities. He specializes in project management, product engineering, and consulting. So Jeff, at this point, we're ready to transition. Over to you to get started.
Thank you, Cheryl. I appreciate it. And thanks to all of you for taking a little bit of time to sit in on our broadcast this afternoon. This is meant to be some education for you in regards to some of the new features and functionality that's available with Dynamics GP 2016. So our agenda really talks about GP now, what the product evolution strategy is, the execution on that strategy, and really then talk about the GP strategy and the Dynamics GP community, as well as then talking about future direction. So I will basically be talking about some of the evolution to date. I will spend some time going through individual features and functions, and then I'm going to also at the end talk about some features that may be sitting on the proposed block for the next release. So, and like Cheryl said, if you have questions, feel free to type those in, and we'll try to get as many of those answered during the presentation today as we can. So the evolution of Dynamics GP really starts to revolve around your ecosystem, and there's been such an evolution in regards to productivity tools with the advent of Office 365 and integrating that into Dynamics GP. And so just a little bit of a background on where we've come from in regards to all of this. So with the release of Dynamics GP 2013 R2, one of the big things that was released is the advent of workflow. So obviously that became quite a productivity tool for many of our clients that were using it already. And that's continued to evolve, and we'll talk a little bit more about that even into what's happened in GP 2016. This gives us the ability to bring others into the process electronically rather than handling many things outside of the system. So you'll have an audit trail of the approval process, whether it be requisitions or purchase orders or several other different types of transactions. So that all started with Dynamics GP 2013 Release 2. We also then have introduced the advent of Office 365 integration. With this, you'll see that Microsoft has added a number of Excel-based dashboards that exist inside of GP. This example that you see here is the financial dashboard, but you're going to find similar dashboards related to purchasing and payables, sales and receivables, and inventory. So again, trying to provide more information to you. And with the use of Office 365, it gives us much more access to this information regardless of where we are. So being able to access this information via your phone or a tablet, or the traditional way while you're sitting in the office. So then we also saw the release of Business Analyzer 7.0. That actually was quite an important release because what this does is allows us to have a cross-platform ability to provide dashboards. This tool is available in the iOS and the Android operating system environments as well as the Windows environment. So this allows us to have access to SQL reporting services reports as well as management reporter reports that are going to be surfaced as dashboards and KPIs. And then the release of Dynamics GP 2015 and Release 2, just continued evolution of the product, continued evolution of the dashboarding functionality, and also additional workflow functionality that's been added. As an example, we now have the ability to do invoice approvals and scanning to provide us with some efficiency. And we've seen a number of our clients working with that and really gaining some benefit in regards to time saving, accuracy, and also enhancement with vendor relationships. So all that to be said, with now we are going to see the advent of GP 2016. You can see here a screenshot, and you may think, well, that looks a little bit different, and it does. One of the things that's going to be important for us to talk about here is the ability to actually access Dynamics GP via a web browser, and also via a tablet or and a web browser, so we can actually access GP from an iOS operating system, an Android operating system, from Chrome. So it's really a great advent that we've seen, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. So with this, we're going to see that these are just some examples of tablets that we can now run Dynamics GP on. And you know, we can be practical about this. It's probably not practical that you're going to run your accounting system and pay your bills and so forth via an Apple iPad or an Android. But what it does give us is it leverages all of the new workflow functionality that started with GP 2013 R2. So it is practical to think that people in the field might be able to enter expenses, enter their time if they're working on a project, being able to do those types of applications are very, very practical and what we might expect, as well as then accessing the dashboard information that's available via the Business Analyzer and another tool that I'll be talking about in a little bit called Power BI. So, you know, the key things that are going on right now and what you see Microsoft leveraging is CRM, ERP, business intelligence, social media. Some of you actually may be working with Dynamics CRM as well as Dynamics GP. And there's some incredible activity going on in regards to integration between CRM and GP, as well as just integration of social media and BI into the CRM environment as well. Service-based architecture was really part of what allowed us to do this. So that's really what has built the foundation for which mobility can play a role. And then many of you may be familiar with Microsoft Azure, the Microsoft Cloud, and Office 365, and how they play a role in making you more productive using GP. So we're going to be able to offer GP on a variety of devices in different environments and can be deployed in the traditional on-premise environment, in a cloud environment, and then also being able to be available to you in a variety of places no matter where you are.
Can I pause for a couple of questions, Jeff?
Sure.
Can you access via web if you have WinSoft?
Yes, actually you can. The only thing that I would say about that at this point is that WinSoft may not have their 2016 product released yet. I haven't double checked with them recently, so it would be dependent upon that, because to do this new web interface, you really do need to have 2016. There was a 2015 web environment, and WinSoft did indeed work with those. So if you're on either of those, you you should be able to use Winsoft. The only other word of caution is that if you're not using the web client today, you may want to wait until you go to GP 2016 because it's really been redeveloped with a new interface. It's far more effective and available than therefore on those cross-platform environments. But the expectation is that many of the applications written for Dynamics GP should be available to run on that web client as well.
We also have a question from David. He has his hand raised, so I'm going to mute his line. David, you're unmuted if you want to ask your question to Jeff. It looks like he might have pressed that on accident. Jeff, we can continue on.
Okay, thank you. Good question, though. So this is a really, I always like to show when we have a new version come out, I always like to kind of look at where we've been and where we're going. So this really talks about the span of time that we've been discussing. So starting with GP 2013, that's when we saw the release of the web client. And we also saw then the web client with 2015, and with 2016 the new web client. And what's really important to know, and I don't consider myself a technical guy, I'm more of an application guy, but the technology changed behind the web client, and it switched from a tool from Microsoft called Silverlight, which has since been discontinued by Microsoft, and moved to what's called HTML5. But HTML5 is the key to allowing us to have this cross-platform capability. Along the way, then you see with R2 we had the GP workspace in Office 365. You see requisition management, which was the beginning and probably the first focus of the workflow tools. Identity management is, again, where we have single sign-on into GP. So it's tied to your Active Directory, and that is the case with the web client, that it does leverage Active Directory, unlike the traditional client. Okay. Along the way, there's always going to be new features that are being added, and hopefully you'll see a lot of that as we go through today's presentation that are more fundamental to accounting or the actual business process, as well as technology enhancements as well. So at the end of 2014, we saw the release of GP 2015. This is where, again, another foundation piece where we brought out the service-based architecture, which started to set the groundwork for the cross-platform functionality. Additional updates to the workflow came along, and Business Analyzer at that point with GP 2015 became a multi-platform tool. And for those of you that don't know anything about Business Analyzer is a dashboarding tool with SQL reporting services that can surface these dashboards in a number of different ways. Those dashboards can be surfaced on the home page of your Dynamics GP solution. They can be surfaced on a desktop with a non-GP user, or they can be made available on an iPad or an Android device as well. So there are a variety of different ways that people can have access to their dashboards and their key information, regardless of whether they're sitting in the office or whether they're in transit somewhere with a tablet. I'm going to talk a little bit about, with 2015 R2, there was the introduction of an all-in-one doc viewer. That was specifically for vendors and purchasing. You'll see that we have some new releases of that for sales and inventory. Also, time management app, more provisioning for Azure, the Microsoft Cloud, and then additional features and functions that were added by the consensus of the client base or customer base for Microsoft. So now what we're into is the release of 2016, and that's really why you're all here. So again, the first and foremost functionality that was added was the enhanced user experience for web client. and I'll have a screenshot for that, and over the next several months we'll be able to show you that in a variety of different ways across platform, etc. The release of the tools that allow you to have multiple browsers and devices. Some additional workflow enhancements that we'll talk about specifically. And then, again, additional features added by customers. At the end of the presentation, we'll talk a little bit about some additional functionality that's going to be added. One thing that I will say is that we're going to talk about a little bit of BI, business intelligence, today, and so don't be surprised when we talk about Power BI and what's called OData. So those continue to evolve to allow you to get the best access to your data in the format that makes most sense for your team. All right, so I'm going to talk first about some of the system enhancements. And I know that I've already really kind of gone over this a little bit, but this is a good screenshot of the web client. We're in the midst of putting the web client in a test environment, so we will be able to show you more live shots of this in the not too distant future. But this HTML web client has a new look and feel, and it is available via a web browser, multiple web browsers, including Internet Explorer, Chrome, Safari, Edge. So if you're using any of those, you'll be able to access the Dynamics GP solution through those devices. Also, there's some enhancements to the user interface. And we'll see more of that as we go along. I'm going to talk about in a minute this new Windows search functionality, and it's going to also look more and more like the traditional Office solutions. One of the things that I think is maybe what people are worried about or thinking about is where would I actually use the web client? And I think there are a variety of places for which you can use it. One of those places may actually be to use it in your traditional network environment, because you can run the web client in that environment, and it does require a web server, but ultimately it allows you to access your GP via a browser. It eliminates the need to have GP loaded on every workstation, which is more traditional with our client base. So there are some maintenance and convenience issues that come into play, as well as just the additional functionality that GP 2016 brings to the table. So again, we've talked about this. So I just don't want to overemphasize this, but again, the different browsers that are available, including Firefox, Chrome, Edge, Internet Explorer, and Safari.
Can I pause for a couple of questions, Jeff?
Sure. Yeah, please.
Do you need user licenses for each user access via web?
Well, and that's a good question. It's going to depend what you're using the web client for and where. If you're going to be using GP in the traditional way of entering transactions, printing reports, doing all of that kind of thing, you will need a normal full license. It really then gets into, if you're looking for inquiry only and some minor reporting, there is what's called a limited license. And where I see a lot of people really getting value is with the self-service licenses. So I have a very, very inexpensive user license that's available to me to enter requisitions, enter time, all of the self-service things, including HR and payroll self-service, that will allow you to get to those specific items that are self-service and not have to pay nearly as much. In fact, I think a self-service license is around $60, so it's a far smaller cost for those that may be using it just for very specific self-service type applications. So there's 3 different licenses, and those 3 different licenses really apply both to the traditional and the web-based client.
Is GP 2016 the only version where you can use the web client access?
No. The GP 2016 is where the new web client interface exists using the HTML5 and therefore having cross-platform functionality. But the web client was actually introduced with GP 2013 and also with 2015 using the Silverlight environment.
Is iPad interchangeable with iPhone?
No, not really. I think it is really meant for a tablet and not a phone. And I think some of that is just practicality. And again, you'll have to make decisions on where you use it with more of a tablet type environment, and where we've seen most use so far is in regards to self-service. If you're using the web client at a desktop, then you can really have full functionality and do whatever you need to.
Okay, we're ready to move on, Jeff.
All right. Thank you, Cheryl. So as we finish up our discussion around the web client, there's one last thing that is really important, and that's the ability to do searching. So what this search functionality allows you to search for a window or a report within the GP web client. You can view open windows. It can show you a list of all open windows and reports, and navigation based on what you've asked for. So you can see that this is really an inquiry window. So when I type in the word customer, you can see that I have the customer item maintenance and the customer maintenance windows open, and then you can see down below a number of other search results as well. So you also have the ability to close all open windows at one time in this environment. So you can see that we have a close all button here. So that may seem, for those of you using the traditional client, this could probably be useful for you as well, but this is definitely a web search functionality. Okay, so that's really the crux of the matter on the web client. And I don't mean to be confusing, just to say it one more time and then we'll move on. There has been a web client in GP 2013 and in 2015. However, it's the platform switch from Silverlight to HTML5 happened with the release of GP 2016, which then opened up the opportunity to run GP from those tablet environments other than Windows that we had just mentioned. Okay. So next thing I wanted to talk about really was the workflow engine and some of the things that have been changed around that. So many of you may already use GP Word templates for your sales invoices, your sales orders, your purchase order. There may be a variety of things that you're using Word templates for already. With the release of, I think it was GP 2015, we were able to have GL, payables, and receivables batch approvals. However, the feedback that Microsoft got, and rightfully so, was, hey, if I'm going to approve a batch and I need to do it in a streamlined fashion, I really need a copy of the edit list that goes along with the batch to be included with the email. Because a lot of times we're expecting that the approvers for this workflow, not just this workflow, but certainly for batch approval workflow, might be doing that as a non-GP user. They might be traveling, and they might need to be able to get access to that information while they may not have access to GP at the time. So what Microsoft has added here is the ability to, when they submit a batch for approval, it can create a Word template, which is in essence a general transaction edit list, a payables transaction edit list, or a receivables transaction edit list. And therefore, that will become an attachment on the email that is sent to through the workflow to the approver. So this, again, applies to GL, payables, and receivables, and it can be emailed to the approver for complete information before they approve. So as you can see down here, I have circled this field that's new that says include worm templates. And what that does is that builds in the functionality to then send that edit list as an attachment to the email so that the approver has all the information they need to make the right decision on a batch approval. And while we know that there may be manual ways to do batch approvals, there's also some functionality that's been in GP for a while. This is an ability that takes it a little bit further and can actually be accessed outside of GP. So what's going to happen then is that when we approve through that email, then that person doesn't have to have a GP license. They can approve it, and once it's approved, then the user who submitted can go in and actually post that batch. That's the concept behind it. And it fits really into a lot of the other workflow functionality that has already existed. Also, for those of you that may be using the workflow already, some additional functionality has been added to allow you to put in some conditional approvals. And so in this example, you can see that I'm doing a purchase requisition. In that purchase requisition, I'm actually going to add a condition that has to be met. And then I need to know if that condition does not get met, then what do we do? And so this did not exist prior, and so, but it does today. You'll notice that there is, if the condition is not met, you'll have the ability to reject the workflow or continue to the next step of the workflow while skipping the step that was supposed to happen prior to that. Also, you'll notice that there is document attachment information here, and you'll find that that kind of came along with some of the releases in 2013 and 2015 that allows you to include in the email some attachments that give the users or the approvers more information so they can make good decisions on approving a requisition, an invoice, or a batch. And then also there's some new functionality so that now email notifications could be sent to a new approver. That's so if an approval has been reassigned, because we have the ability to delegate, we'll actually be able to make sure that that new delegated approver also gets an email that that alerts them to the information. For those of you not using the GP workflow to this point, the email function, the email format can be decided by you. You're going to end up with hyperlinks that give you the ability to then approve, reject, or delegate. And depending on how you format this email, you could have additional details about the transaction down here, as well as, in many cases, you can also have an attachment of the transaction for the transaction right here. So in the case of a payables approval, you might have a scanned copy of the invoice. Now another thing is that they've added functionality to allow you to edit the attachment information that flowed from the master record. So we have the ability to attach a document and then have it flow through a transaction process. And so this is just more information, but your ability to make adjustments to it through these new attachment property screens. Also, and lastly on the workflow topic, and I may exit out of my screen here real quick and jump into GP to show you just how to get to some of this stuff. You now have the ability to scan multiple pages. So if you're interested in using the GP workflow specifically around invoice approvals particularly, we've now added the ability to scan multiple pages. There was some limitation in the first release of the invoice approval that didn't allow us to scan multiple pages at one time, and therefore may not be able to provide the approver with all the information that they need. There are some requirements that are wrapped around what scanners work with Dynamics GP, but the general answer is that the general answer is that there are Microsoft compatible scanners that are available, and we can get you a list of what those are so that you can use those scanners to then scan in the documents right into GP rather than keying them in or attaching them via an attachment that you had to scan and then attach, or scan to a file and then attach. So it streamlines the process. So this just gives you the ability to be a little bit more flexible with multi-page documents. All right, so I'm going to take a moment and I'm going to actually move out of here real quickly, and bear with me.
We do have a quick question, Jeff.
Fire away.
Can you have users web-based and some traditional user non-web-based?
Yes. Yes, the answer to that is absolutely yes. So, and that actually is fairly common, especially if you got some people in the office and other people that travel and things like that. If you have employees that are all they're going to really use it for is requisitions or expense reports, that type of thing, that the web client can be a very, very nice place for them to use the web client.
That's all the questions.
So what I'm going to do, I'm sorry?
That's all the questions for now.
Okay, thanks, Cheryl. So what I'm going to do is, and I'll walk you through this process. So we're in GP 2016, and I go to the Administration tab. Underneath the Administration tab, I have my system set up and my company set up. Inside of there, I also then have my workflow maintenance. So I just wanted to give you, first of all of the workflow functionality really gets handled in this area. So if you're considering this, be aware that this is where you're going to define it. First of all, I wanted to show you real quickly just on the batch approval. So here you can see that I have this little plus sign because I created a batch approval. Here I have where I set up the batch approval. I can activate it when I'm ready to use it. I can set some rules for which I use it. And then I can define the steps within the workflow. So what I said here is that I want the, I'm going to require an approval when the batch total is greater than $1,000. Otherwise, I'm going to say that that batch can be approved without approval. I mean, that batch can roll through automatically, can be posted automatically. But what we were talking about in regards to new feature functionality is then we have the condition. If it's not met, what do we do? And so what you can see here is then we can end the workflow, we can continue to the next step, or we can reject the workflow automatically based upon a step not being met. So this just gives us some additional flexibility. The other thing is in regards to this payables batch approval, you'll notice that then we have the ability to include Word templates. And this is where, especially with the payables, receivables, and general ledger batches, this is where there will be a Word template that will produce and attach to the email the edit list that can then be reviewed by the batch approver. So anyway, in regards to the approval process, this is where you'll do it. And then for those of you that are just curious, this is where workflow is defined. So you can see that not only do we have the workflow maintenance, and inside of there all of the different workflow functions that can be set up, but we also then have the workflow calendar and also then the email setup so that you can define actually what goes into, I'll do this real quickly. Well, there we go. So what this allows us to do is then define what that email will look like. So it's taken just a second to bring this up. I'm in a virtual environment, so sometimes there's a little lag. There we go. So if we pick our payables batch approval as an example, then you can see that here is the verbiage, and this can be customized for you. Also, we can then determine what the body looks like and then the document lines that go on this. So for each of the individual types of workflow approval, so here's a payables transaction approval, and this one may look a little different than, and this is where I can go pick and choose what fields go, and I can insert them in, and this is where I can customize the body of the email. So some of that is not new to 2016, but it certainly plays a role in regards to making sure that the individual approvers are notified as they should be. Okay. So I'm going to move on. So we're going to go ahead and close that down for a moment. We are going to then go back, and now we're going to talk a little bit about some of the distribution updates that have been available or available in 2016. For any of you that are using project accounting and also maybe using requisitions, you'll now be able to do that. In 2015, the requisition module did not have a link out to the project accounting module, and now it does. So you can see in this window that project number and cost category IDs are now available in the requisition. Now this is, if you're not using project accounting, these two fields won't be there for you. They don't need to be. You'll just start with an item number and so forth. So requisitions with project and cost categories can still go through the workflow, and project and cost category data that is put into the requisition will flow into the purchase order when the requisition is final approved. Also, in regards to purchase orders on the distribution side, you've had the ability to put prepayments on a purchase order total. Now you actually have the ability to include in the prepayment everything beyond the subtotal. So now if you have freight or miscellaneous or taxes, those can actually be included in that prepayment as well. So the entire PO amount can be included in the prepayment, whereas before just the subtotal could be. Which makes you wonder why it was that way to start with, right? So anyway, moving on. When you're entering expenses, if you're using project accounting, you now have the ability to attach your receipts and all of the documentation you need to file an expense report. So you'll notice that just like in other areas inside of GP 2015, now in 2016 you also have the paperclip and the attachment functionality right inside of GP 2016 and right inside the project time and expense, employee expense entry. So the header and line attachments such as receipts can now be added to the employee expense. And the attachments will flow through the workflow. So that what that means is that if I'm filing an expense report, then I'm going to have my next in line will be able to see all of the documentation that goes along with this. And it'll just eliminate a lot of back and forth email information or communication and questions and everything, so that you can have everything sealed up in one centralized location.
You want to pause for a couple of questions here, Jeff?
Sure, fire away.
Okay. For invoice workflow, will the invoice be automatically entered into GP, or will the invoices still need to be manually entered?
You still enter the invoice. So I don't want to give people the feeling that GP is a document management solution. It does not have what is called OCR, or optical character reader functionality. So when you scan it, it's really more informational scanning than it is scanning and having the scanning functionality actually interpret numbers and words off of the document itself. If that's something that is important to you, then I would look at one of the independent software vendor options that are available to us, And if you have questions on what those are, we certainly can help you out. But to name a few, we've worked with a tool called RecLogic. We've worked with a tool called QuickTag. We've worked with a tool called MetaViewer. There are a number of them that include advanced workflow functionality, plus they have this OCR functionality that will allow you to really streamline it to even a greater degree. In this release of the workflow, there is no OCR functionality, unfortunately.
Is workflow an additional module or add-on that must be purchased?
Workflow comes with the solution.
Okay, thanks,
so,
Jeff.
I'm sorry?
Thanks, Jeff.
You're welcome. So to kind of elaborate on that a little bit more, workflow will be available for any of the modules that you're using. So as an example, if you're using purchase orders, payables, then you'll have the workflow functionality available for that. If you're using the GL batch and payables batch and receivables batch, then you'll have that workflow. And that's all included in the new licensing in what's called the starter pack, which everyone will have. The one that is a little bit more extensive is the project time and expense workflow, because that does require, from a licensing perspective, that you own the extended pack. If you're using Project Today, then you have the extended pack and therefore have that workflow functionality as well. There's no additional purchase. That's part of the beauty of all this workflow functionality, is it doesn't require an additional purchase. And in many cases, we've found that the functionality made available through GP is more than satisfactory. Normally, what we'd like to do with you, if you're thinking about something like this, is we would like for you to sit down and define your requirements at maybe a deeper level, so that we can make a determination whether this is going to fit your needs or not. Okay, with all that being said, thanks for all these questions. They're great questions. So with GP 2016, I think there's been some real attempts to fix some things that probably needed fixed for a while. So as an example, when we're entering expenses into project accounting, some of the headers have been updated to be more in line with the expense names in project accounting. So you can see here that we have column headings that say project, cost category, purchases, whereas before some of this may have said inventory or item or something like that. So, so the item field is now the cost category. The billing is now the bill type. So that means, is it billable? Is it not billable? So if you're a professional service firms and you're providing services and you have expenses, are you billing for those or not? And then unit cost is and the unit measure fields have been added to keep this more in line with where it should be. And then lastly, around project accounting, there's been new reports added to the workflow. So in the timesheet edit list, you can now print a timesheet edit list from the timesheet entry window. And so this will allow you to actually print a report that summarizes what you've entered into the screen so that you can validate the information. Also, the time and expense report edit list can now be printed from the expense report entry window. So you have a timesheet entry window and an expense report entry window, and now both of those will provide you with the ability to print an edit list to validate your work. So just another thing to streamline the process a little bit better and make it easier. So, so we've talked a lot about project accounting and how it interfaces with requisitions, how we enter time, how we enter expenses. The next thing that I wanted to spend a little bit of time on is what's called the all-in-one document view. And I don't know if any of you on the line are actually on GP 2015, but if you are, on the purchasing side, you have a purchasing all-in-one view. And so as you take a look at this window, you'll notice that this really focuses on sales order processing, and it focuses in on receivables management. So if I issue a quote, if the quote is accepted by the customer and becomes an order, if the order is then fulfilled and invoiced, and then if I get paid by the customer or I issue a credit memo against the customer, all of that information can be available to me in one window. So if I bring up, in this case, Aaron Fitz Electrical, what it allows me to do is look at all of the documents. If I happen to select, for instance, this particular quote, it can actually then show me any orders, invoices, cash receipts, and credits or returns that are linked to it. So if I start with an order, then I can show if there are any invoices, if it's been billed, if I've gotten paid, etc. So this really allows you, on a customer-by-customer basis, to tie all of your documents together. This is actually going to be available to you in a variety of places. So you can see it from your customer maintenance windows, you can see it from inquiry windows, you can see it from navigation lists, and also you can see it from a home page. And so this actually, if you're using the sales order processing and receivables modules, can be a great value for you to really see what the status is of a document from start to finish. We also now have one that's related to inventory. So this really is very focused on quantity in, quantity moved, and quantity out. So as you transfer between locations, that'll be your quantity moved. Your quantity in would be your receivings through purchase order or inventory adjustments, and your quantity out would be sales orders or adjustments out. So you can see that you can bring up an item and you can see everything related to that. Down here at the bottom, if you have more than 5 transactions, you can just click next 5 and it will bring up the next 5 transactions in line. So the idea here is to give you greater visibility of activity on an, in the case of sales, on a customer by customer basis, by document, and then on an inventory basis, what you've moved in, what you've moved out, and what you've moved between locations. All right, so I'm going to take another moment, and I am going to jump out into Dynamics GP, and I'm just going to spend a couple minutes here just kind of showing you how to get to some of these windows. So I'm going to start off with the sales all-in-one document. I'm going to go ahead and bring up a customer here, and this happens to be Aaron Fitz. You'll notice that there's now an icon at the top of the window that when you click on, it will show you basically all of the related documents to this particular customer. So again, the idea is to be able to link those all together. Now, that's not the only place that you can get this, because you also have the ability to do this through an inquiry window. So you can see that if I bring Aaron Fitz here, I'm going to get the same window with all of that information. Also, from this window, I have the ability to drill in and actually see the transaction that came through the system. So keep that in mind as well. And then lastly, you're going to be able to see these also through a navigation list. So every one of these different places, you're going to be able to get to the to these all-in-one views. So keep that in mind. It's just a real convenience. The same be true when we look at inventory. So if I select an item, you'll see that when I bring up that item, I'm going to clear that. If I bring up an item, then I can click on all-in-one view, and I guess I don't have any. Well, here we go. Let's put this in a warehouse. But it would basically list all those documents as well, and those are available kind of in the same way in inventory as what you saw in sales. Also, for any of you that are not using the workflow, you'll notice down here that I got purchase requisitions, and I have my timesheets and expense reports, just to give you some sense. if I enter a requisition, you'll notice here that I have all of the information we were looking for, plus the project number and the cost category. So as I'm entering a requisition, it ties into that. If I enter an expense report, and I don't think I have mine configured properly, but there should be a paper clip here so that I can attach documents to that, and the same be true with my timesheets. So all of these features are all available. You can get to them in a variety of ways. So with my requisitions, I can get them from the home page if I choose to put it there, or I can get it from the transactions inside my page. So all of that kind of works together. Okay, so I'm going to keep moving because we got a few more things to cover. So now we're going to talk about business intelligence. And so I'm going to kind of run through a lot of these, but if I were guessing, I would say almost everybody on this call uses smart lists at one time or another. And so what we have now in GP 2016 is numbers from a smart list are now exported to Excel, and they'll be formatted as a number, not text, in the spreadsheet. And that can be a big deal because it saves you time formatting the documents or formatting the spreadsheet once it's been pushed over. So it's really a simple feature, but it allows you to now send those pieces of information over as the appropriate dollar figures, which then means that it allows you to take information and manipulate it in Excel once you've exported it from a smart list. You also have the ability to import or export smart lists from the smart list designer. So a user will actually be able to export and import smart list definitions created with smart list designer from one install to another. So this just gives you some flexibility, and if any of you are in like user groups or things like that, this could be helpful for you as well. Just being able to share smart lists a little bit more easily. And then you also have the ability to create a new smart list from a favorite that you're using, so you don't have to remove all the extra columns and so forth from the smart list. So I think they're doing I don't know if many of you have noticed this, if you've been following this, but I think there's a lot of work going on with smart list designer to make it more functional, to allow you to pull in more information, to do better inquiries inside of the product, and frankly, making it more like the ISV product Smart List Builder. Also, you can add Smart List Designer created objects to Smart List options. Again, just another piece of flexibility to allow you to better leverage Smart List Designer and make it more useful for you. Okay. Hey, Cheryl, I'm moving on to financials. Are there any questions on any of those pieces?
There's one question here. Within the all-in-one views, can we see which documents link to the others? For example, if you select vendor A, can we see that then select PO 1, 2, 3 and see shipments, payments, etc. for that PO?
That's the idea, yes. So let me circle back real quick to the screenshot. Sorry, there we go. It's coming. Oh, no, I went too far. Okay, so notice that there's a little checkbox here, and obviously this is a PowerPoint, but if you check this box for this particular quote, then any orders, invoices, cash receipts, or credits and returns that are related to that quote will all be listed here. So I hope that answers your question. Okay, back to financials. So with the financials, many of you probably do budgeting, and many of you do your budgeting in Excel and then import those budgets into GP. So now there's functionality that says when you're importing a budget from Excel, you can get an exception report that will print displaying accounts that aren't set up in Dynamics GP. So if you have a budget formatted in Excel for accounts that don't exist in GP, you're going to get an exception report to tell you that. And then on the other side of this, when importing a budget from Excel, an exception report will print displaying accounts that are duplicated within the Excel file. The first record will be imported. So if I have the same account in the file more than once, then it's only going to bring the first one in, but it's also going to give me a report to tell me what it did. Again, I think a very useful piece of functionality. In regards to analytical accounting, and by the way, we're almost done in respect to your time. Analytical accounting, it allows us to automatically give users access to all transaction dimension codes rather than defining access individually. The original intent of analytical accounting was allow certain people to have access to just the codes that apply to them, but what they found is that it's really inconvenient to go in and pick and choose. So you'll have the option to restrict access or not. If this box is not marked, then basically everyone has access that has access to analytical accounting. And a big time saver. I don't know how many times I've had clients call and say, hey, I can't see, I added this code, but I can't see it, and this is why. All right, for any of you that are working in Canada, there's a new EFT file format for Scotia Bank, which I understand is a fairly significantly sized bank in Canada. This one I think you might find useful is when you're posting cash receipts and receivables, it will allow you to post a batch with cash receipts in it, and it will create the deposit for you automatically. So it gives you some flexibility so that you don't have to go in necessarily and mark the individual transactions once you're in Bankrec. It can actually batch them together into a deposit automatically. Also, now this is a nice function, is you'll notice that we have a feature when we're selecting payments. We can actually select transactions to be paid by credit card, and then we can have the system automatically create a voucher for our credit card company. So this will also print a remittance form to show the invoices paid. A couple things that just make life a little easier. Inactive pay codes, being able to exclude those. I think we have some of that functionality already in payables and receivables. This is just a new one added for payroll. And also there's now an easier way to set up your posting accounts in payroll and be able to see those. It's in a navigation list where it didn't used to be. And then you can export and import those payroll posting accounts using Excel too, if that is easier for you to set up. I want you guys to keep your eyes open for what's called OData deployment. So OData is it's a separate install for GP, but it provides access. It's kind of like the old ODBC, but it provides you security around it so you can control access to the data. And it also allows you to define the points of service. So here I am in Excel, and I can create a connection to OData feed so that then I can pull this data into GP or any tool that supports OData. And then we also, and we've been talking a lot about this, but with GP 2016, for any of you interested or have been looking at Power BI, we now have the ability to set up Power BI views on our homepage inside of GP. And they'll be right on our homepage, or they can be accessed independent of GP. There's also going to be a new Power BI content pack that will have dashboards for Power BI already built based on Dynamics GP data. All right, so we're almost done. I just got a few things, and I'm not going to go through these individually, but there are new features that are planned for GP 2016 Release 2, which should be the second half of this year, I guess toward the end of the year. But you can see that we're going to be able to have intercompany bank transfers as an example. EFT payments to hit bank reconciliation module and lump sum amount, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll take just a second and let you take a look at this, and I have a couple more pages of these things. So I guess my point as you're looking through this is that there's going to be a lot of continued development. You're going to see Dynamics GP released on a rapid release schedule. You should see one major update and then a release 2 for that in a year. And so I think it's going to be really important to stay in touch with your consulting team here at Socius to make sure that you make good decisions in regards to what functionality is best for your organization, and when do you need to make the next step. Barcode field for the item maintenance, credit card invoices to original invoices. There's a variety of things here. And you'll have access to this this list as well, or this PowerPoint deck. We'll make that available for anyone that attended. So you can see there's quite a list here. So with all that said, Cheryl, do you want to jump back in for a moment? And then we'll take some questions.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thanks, Jeff. And to remind everyone while we're waiting for questions here, you can either raise your hand and I'll mute your line, or you could submit your questions through the GoToWebinar question box and I can field those over to Jeff. We did want to mention a couple of upcoming events and promotions. Our next GP user webinar is on July 14th from 1 to 2 Eastern on choosing the right reporting tool. The GP User Group Summit is coming up on October 11th to 14th in Tampa, Florida. Please save the date as that event approaches, and you can find more information at gpugsummit.com. We have a few promotions we're running right now. Our additional GP user promotion is expiring this Friday, the 24th. We're offering 10% off 2 or 15% off 3 or more users. And also offering 10% off SalesPad software through July 29th. It looks like we do have some questions coming in, Jeff. Is there a date for Service Pack 1 for GP 2016?
Well, there really hasn't been at this point, but I've had some interesting conversations with the folks at Microsoft, and because of the rapid release schedule, they are very confident in, each one of these updates is actually going to be smaller, and they're very confident that the product is working well, and they feel like the old adage that we should wait 3 months or the first service pack probably doesn't apply the way that it used to. And to be truthful with you, all of our GP 2016s we've done so far have been very successful. So I've always been real conservative on that, but we have not gotten any feedback as to when a service pack will be released.
What is the status of Management Reporter with 2016?
I am surprised we waited this long for that question. So here is the story on Management Reporter. Management Reporter will continue to be supported with GP 2016, and in fact into the future. I have heard that Management Reporter will be available and supported all the way through at least 2021, if not well past that. What they have decided is that they will be investigating, or they've created a relationship with a new company called Jet Reports, and Jet Reports has a Excel-based reporting tool that they're already using with Dynamics NAV, and it will be bundled with GP as well starting in July. And so, but there's no need to get worried about Management Reporter. It will continue to exist. It will continue to be supported well into the future.
Can you have multiple windows open in the web client?
That is something that is being worked on right now. My understanding is that you cannot.
Okay.
I read something about it that is something that they're working toward.
That is all the questions in our box right now. So Jeff and I will stay on the line a couple more minutes in case any of you have any additional questions. His direct contact information is listed on the screen, his phone number and email address. So if you do have any questions afterwards, you are welcome to reach out to him directly. So if you do want to jump off now, we thank you for joining us today and have a good rest of your week.